This week on the Markcast, when Reed says it's a jam-packed episode, he's not playing around. He's not effing around, as the kids say, or as I say. Reed, who do we got on tap?
Yeah, we have an exciting show. We have CFL teams reaching out to us to feature their players on them, like the BC Lions. We have Lucky Whitehead coming up.
Obviously, I can wear this hat. I can wear my propeller hat, and I can show up to practice with it on. But when I put my helmet on and we in between those lines, like that's a different ball game. I go into a different focus, and I'm able to switch that gear. Like I'm able to switch that.
We have, friend of me of the show, Daniel Austin. Well, we have my arch rival nemesis, Daniel Austin, joining us on the podcast. Danny, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I mean, I feel like we're over the nemesis. We were nemesises. I don't know if that's how you pluralize nemesis, but I got nothing but respect. And honestly, I think it's so cool that you guys are down there doing what you do and supporting our league and shining a spotlight.
And then we have Paul Reeths. We're talking USFL. We didn't get the head coaches that we thought we were getting, but lots of concerns, interesting thoughts, and stuff there.
It's crazy that the league has that kind of staying power, especially in the public consciousness. I mean, let's be honest about what Fox is doing here. They have no ties whatsoever to the former USFL. They believe that there is value yet in that name and in the team names. They're hoping to trade in on that nostalgia.
And of course, the name of the episode is USFLTs. Of course, making fun of this stupid idea that the NFTs are coming to FCF.
Yeah, but we've been wondering, how is the USFL going to make money? Maybe we do some USFLTs. I think we're going to patent that, trademark that. I think we're doing the Lord's work there. We're trying to figure out how this resurrected league is going to make some money. So there you go.
Got a cliche there for your use of the Lord's work. We also got a little bit of NFL news, and also we're talking all this stuff with the XFL, podcasting about podcasting. Just wait to hear this podcast. Not ours, but this podcast we feature in our show.
A lot of stuff. We're going down the rabbit hole here. Drop me into the bathtub and wake me up. Wake me up, Leo.
It's all coming up this week on the Markcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Markcast. It's again Friday morning. Hope you guys had a good week. I know I did. How about you?
You're doing great, Paul. I feel like I'm Rich Bisaccia. I saw that clip. I thought that was us. Like we're in between commercial breaks. You're doing great, Paul. You're doing good.
Yep. We gas each other up between breaks. We gotta keep the morale going. Even when we push through some, we get really excited about some stuff. We get really amped about some stuff. We pushed through and, we talked to each other during commercial breaks. That was a good meme that you shared today. I like that. I like that a lot. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the Markcast. A lot of things going on this week. As Reed always says, the jam-packed show. Reed, what do we got on tap?
Well, I was inspired. I thought the episode, we're talking a lot about fan control football coming up. I think that they might have won over Dorothy, my wife, with fan control football with Steve Aoki. She's a big Steve Aoki fan. But I just thought it was a funny play on words, USFLTs. We're talking USFL. How's the USFL going to make money? We're talking NFTs coming up. I have some props here for the intro, too. We'll come up here in just a second. But big show. We have star BC Lions re-signed wide receiver Lucky Whitehead, courtesy of Matt Baker and the BC Lions. So imagine that. We have a thank you to Matt and the team, a CFL team asking us to have a guest on. Couldn't believe it.
Yep. I mean, we give you crap about you continually saying they're America's CFL team, but in this case, it worked out. It worked out because, you're lifting them up, you're gassing them up, and then all of a sudden, we're able to get that great interview. I want to thank BC Lions for grabbing that. Anything else going?
Yeah.
Oh, I see this.
Yeah. So Lucky comes on because the big deal is Lucky just re-signed like a huge mega contract, big star wide receiver. So Lucky comes on. We have friend of the show, Daniel Austin of the Calgary Sun and Herald. Danny comes on. Danny has I think Danny had a late night last night. Danny was looking for his coffee and a lot of backlighting issues. So if you want to do like some edibles and strobe light effects, like when you're watching Danny Austin's interview, it's a little wild, but Danny's got a lot of good info. We're talking all about, Jake Mayer and Bo Levi Mitchell and the Calgary, all that situation. Derek Dennis, who's going to be on the show next week. Danny talks about Derek Dennis. So lots of Calgary stuff. And then we have Paul Reeths coming on. He is an author of the United States Football League book. He's a USFL historian. He was on Mark's show a little while ago talking about what is USFL? But now we thought we were having a teams today, remember, or coaches today, right, Paul? That's kind of why I said, well, I don't think we can record early. We still don't have coaches. We have a lot of other things that I researched today. So it was good that we're doing this, but we talk a lot about that. Like, wow, this is getting danger zone. So Paul, great showing by Paul. He was really good, but yeah, 3 really good guests today.
Cool stuff. Like and subscribe, of course. We always said every show. We got a giveaway coming up soon. We hit 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. And that will be some of that Grey Cup media goods that Reed not purchased, but acquired in Hamilton.
Yeah, we can also now do, if you listen to us on Spotify, if you are on your phone, if you go to markcast.com/review, Spotify will now let you do reviews on there if you're using the mobile site. So they just sent me an email. Maybe they will for Wheelhouse too. Like you can't do it on a desktop. So literally if you type it in on a desktop, it just doesn't show up. But if you go to the markcast.com/review, leave us a review anywhere. But if you have Spotify now, I know we have a lot of Spotify listeners that wanted to do that. Also, we have new Zoa flavors. I feel like I'm Carrot Top with my props. We have a new white peach, and then there's a tropical punch. I ordered the white peach, and then this is non-sponsored. Paul, remember that time when we had Manscaped? Remember when Manscaped was like I bought this nose hair trimmer, thinking, oh, it's Manscaped. Like this is the worst nose hair trimmer I've ever bought in my life. It doesn't cut. And I went on the Amazon reviews and everyone said the same thing I did. Like, oh, it's Manscaped. Like they do, all the stuff. Like they can do it doesn't cut at all. And all the reviews. So lots of negative complaints about that. So don't be.
Well, I know I have like an ear, hair and nose trim. Ear and nose hair trimmer. There we go. You're right. Eventually. And it doesn't cut either. It just moves this little ball really quickly and just stick it in. Like, that's weird. Cause like I'll check after I'm like, I didn't cut anything. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting to say the least.
We have voicemails coming at the end of the show, just a couple, and then we are podcasting about podcasts today. So there's been a lot of stuff going on about this Jim Manos podcast, XFL stuff coming up. Even if this has been floating around this week, this executive with football operations with the XFL, the podcast stuff. I have my own takes, and I'll be curious to hear Paul's takes. So XFL stuff coming up after the break, after our guest. So just stick tuned for that.
Very cool stuff. All on tap. Stay tuned for the guests coming up at about the middle of the show. Then, we'll go from there after the guests drop in and talk to Reed. First things first, we're going to talk some CFL stuff, and it's kind of related to the NFL too. Canadian Catherine Raish, I believe that's right. Yep, she has requested to interview for the Minnesota Vikings GM job. So that's pretty impressive. I just, there's been a lot of like chatter these days about women getting these upper echelon jobs. In Miami, their director of baseball operations is a woman, and rightfully so. My New York Yankees have hired Rachel Balkovich, pronouncing it correctly, as the new single A Tampa Tarpons, I believe it is.
Turpins.
Yeah, Turpins. She is their manager. Their manager. Like, she is the Aaron Boone of a single A team, and she probably will manage better than him. So there's a lot of stuff going on with women getting these upper echelon jobs. And to that point, like there's a lot of blowback, but trust me, like these women are very talented and qualified for these positions.
Yeah, what's cool about Catherine is she spent time in the CFL. She was also with the XFL. So, a lot of just different, she's only like 39, right? I mean, it says here the 33. I thought she was 39. Doesn't matter her age. She's a female, but just tremendous like experience. She many years, with like I said, with the CFL and then with the XFL as well. So exciting for her. Obviously, we've had a lot of the Texans coach today just got let go too. So a lot of different blowback across the NFL. Beth Hamilton is potentially going to be the OC of the Texans moving forward after his work with the Davis Mills. So there you go.
It'll be interesting to see if he eventually gets another shot at, a head coaching position there. Mm-hmm. On to the CFL, though. Hamilton Tigercats have decided to re-sign quarterback Dane Evans to the 2023 season. He was scheduled to be a free agent in just a few weeks. Orlando Stanauer, the president of football operations and head coach now, says, we are excited that Dane and his family have chosen to stay in Hamilton for the next 2 seasons. He's not just an outstanding quarterback, but an outstanding human being. His work ethic and authentic leadership skills make him someone that teammates naturally appreciate.
Yeah, Dave Naylor reports it's a high 3,000, low 400,000 offer. Not quite. Dave calls it not quite like elite quarterback money, right? Like Michael Riley is like more like 750,000. But the issue here is Mazzoli will obviously have to take far less if he is staying. And there's been a lot of blowback, right? Because Dane looked good. Mazzoli was the one that won them the Grey Cup. So there's a lot of. I would put more faith in Dane as well, right? I think Dane's proven more upside, but Mazzoli carried them for a lot of last season. So it's interesting to see that they've gone head in with him, probably knowing that they don't have enough money for both of them at that level.
And again, we touched on it earlier. Lucky Whitehead re-signing with the BC Lions. Reed's got an interview with him coming up. Through a two-year contract extension throughout the 2023 season. So he's good to go for a couple seasons there.
Yeah, getting 200,000 this year, 205 next year. I think there's a couple how they do it. There's a couple incentives and all that, but it puts him as the highest paid wide receiver. Good for Lucky. Certainly earned that. Still questions, and he talked about this like. We assume Riley's going to be back. We don't know that. Lucky says Mike was definitely my guy. I'm so grateful for him. We're hoping that they retain, but even if you have Nathan Rourke there, does BC go through a rebuild year? I don't know if you're paying 200,000 to Lucky to go through a rebuild year with Nathan Rourke. So I think points to me that Riley is staying there if we're spending 200,000 on a wide receiver for him.
Highest paid wide receiver, according to our friend of the show, Farhan Lalji, saying that he is now the highest paid receiver in the CFL with a $200,000 a year salary, roughly, give or take. They've also re-signed their longest-serving defensive back TJ Lee for a 1-year contract extension for the 2022 season. He was scheduled again to be a free agent on February 8th. And Justin Dunk from 3 Down Nation reported the news on Sunday.
Yeah, they also asked TJ about Brian Burnham, right, coming back. He's kind of one of the other. He's a little elder wide receiver for the Lions. Like, are you going to have both Burnham and Lucky? It's just so hard with the CFL because they have such a tight salary cap of trying to, you're paying your quarterback, we're paying these players, you're trying to spread it out. So obviously they're trying to get Brian Burnham back on. I know Kenny Stevenson, longtime listener of the show, I'm sure he's excited for Lucky to come up. Lots of curiosity about if Brian Burnham is coming back as well.
Ottawa Redblacks have signed Canadian offensive lineman Jacob Ruby to a 2-year extension, 2-year contract, I should say, through the 2023 season. Of course, the Elks released Mr. Ruby here in August due to a breach of the COVID protocols for misrepresenting his vaccination status. We talked about that earlier in the show. Ruby said in a statement, he's extremely excited and proud to be an Ottawa Redblack. I want to thank Sean Burke and coach Paul LaPolice for making this decision an easy one. Well, I think it was easy one because I don't know if anybody else was going to sign you, being honest.
Yeah, he did his penance. Look at Antonio Brown before all this stuff. Antonio Brown lied about his vaccination status as well. He got to return to the Bucks, right? He was only a 3-game suspension where they basically blacklisted Jacob Ruby for the entire season. So, I think he did his time.
Reigning CFL sack king AC Leonard signing a 2-year extension with the Rough Riders through the 2023 season. He's a 6'2", 250-pound lineman. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing tonight. A lineman, and of course, he had the CFL sack title last year, adding 41 defensive tackles to career high 11 sacks in 11 games. 1 sack a game on average.
Yeah, exciting too. So Derek Dennis, you'll remember we've talked about him in the past. He re-signed with Stampeders this week. Piffle's podcast had that news. Derek's going to be on the show next week. We'd already planned that. I said, wow, that really worked out good timing-wise. Derek's going to be returning to the Stampeders. Daniel Austin and I call him Daniel. I don't know. That's like my smarmy name. Danny and I talk a lot about Derek. Big signing for him. Derek's a little bit older, right? Returning, being an offensive lineman in the CFL is a tough position. Derek's going to be on next week, so obviously, stay tuned for that. But good to see him. He was part of that whole Edmonton thing and got released, but they wouldn't let him go and all that stuff. So he's back.
Kyron Moore re-signed to the Rough Riders, 1 year, $120,000. The Atlanta Falcons, though, dipping their checks and their money across the border, signing former CFL defensive back DeAndre Alford. He was the most sought-after player in the CFL for NFL teams this offseason. He's a 24-year-old who started all 14 games for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So clearly Winnipeg's got some rebuilding to do on the defensive front here.
Yeah, they also, and let's make it a bunch of stuff here. So they're signing Braden Lenis. He was with the with the Blue Bombers as well. And then also they were working out Kenny Lawler as well. So it's crazy. Like they're really, the Falcons are really making the push, like dipping back into the CFL with this. That Kenny Lawler hasn't signed yet, but he was working out this week. I think Tuesday I had on here. So it's just interesting to see like one team in particular. You know, the XFL had that with the Panthers. Remember, they had a lot of guys. Just interesting how certain teams seem to be more amenable to working with, you know, not alt league like the CFL, but it is weird that the Falcons would target that many players from one team.
Definitely. The Edmonton Elks have signed American quarterback Kyle Loxley and American linebacker Matthew Thomas for contracts. It doesn't say how long the contracts are. They just apparently signed them. Maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. Who knows?
See about this. The interesting thing about Matthew Thomas was with the Battlehawks for a cup of coffee back, in the XFL. So that got. I know we had writers in the CFL News Hub group that were asking me about that. This Kyle Loxley, he had kind of some history back in like 2019. They called it like terroristic threats. Like he got arrested for driving under marijuana. Allegedly all these things, but it seemed like he's got. It's weird. There's a little bit of weird stuff going on there, but Edmonton never went to cease to design. Got to keep things interesting in Edmonton. So there you go.
Very cool. And some bad news, some low news to report here now. Canadian Football Hall of Fame player, longtime coach Don Southern, passed away in Ohio at the age of 85 this week. First reported by the Columbus Dispatch. He played briefly in the NFL before having a Hall of Fame career in the CFL. As both a defensive back and a kicker. He played at 8 Grey Cups, winning 4. He also won 3 as an assistant coach.
Yeah. So anyway, there was a couple of CFL guys passed away this week. A couple of had a couple of coffee. This seemed to be the most notable one, but a couple of those I always like to just, if I see him float around, and obviously our condolences on that.
All right, we're going to take a break, go to some commercials, come back. We're going to talk to Lucky Whitehead, Danny Austin, and Paul Reeths, all next, right here on the Markcast.
Well, I am tremendously excited. Big re-signing for America's CFL team, the BC Lions. Lucky Whitehead, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Can't complain at all.
So, obviously you've had a past. You played for Dallas before, America's team, right? They call Dallas Cowboys America's team. We have dubbed the BC Lions America's CFL team. So it's only fitting that you're carrying on, right, the brand here in the CFL. What do you think about us in the BC Lions America's CFL team?
I love it, man. I love that stadium. It's been definitely a blessing for myself. Making the decision to come to BC in 2021. It's been very fun, and I just hope that we can build and start winning some games.
How has the off season here, the holidays, everything? You said you're in Florida. How is everything going before we talk about football? Personal life, how are you doing?
It's going great. My off season's been good. I've been with my dogs, my family. The holidays were great. I'm just back training, but yeah, mentally and physically, I've been great.
There had to have been significant interest, right? Coming off the season, there was a lot of, where's Lucky? Is he going to go back to BC? Is he going to go? Any thoughts ever of going anywhere than back with the black and orange?
No, I was kind of just waiting to, as far as start negotiating. I had some offers from BC that, I was just sitting on. Didn't really want to start negotiating. I just wanted to, take time away from football and just, relax for a little bit, chill. Then we started negotiating, and it was a quick response as far as their interest in me and my interest in coming back. So, it was a no-brainer. Like I said, I love the city. I love playing in that dome. The all-orange uniforms are pretty sick. But yeah, I love, my teammates been great. Coach has been great. So just, it was all around. It was just fitting for me. It was a great system.
Obviously reports out, friend of the show, Farhan Lalji, right, talks, the significance of the contracts, right, they offered you, making you, highest wide receiver right now. What does that mean just in terms of their interest in you, right, wanting to be a part of their team, and how does that make you feel?
No, it's been great. It's been a blessing. Just to have that, that interest, and them showing that they want me back as much as I wanted to be back was amazing. But yeah, I mean, I know it's gonna come with a lot. I mean, I got to prepare for that. I am prepared for that, and I just look forward to just getting back out there to training camp and flying around, picking up where I left off in 2021.
It's cool. We track, right, a lot of these leagues, right, CFL, the alternate leagues. We just had Vernon Adams on the show last week, guys that have gone through these journeys, right, played in, different leagues and different teams and working to get here. Vernon's getting a lot of support behind him with the Alouettes, right? And it seems like, with the cash and everything else, right, that they're making, right, an effort to get you, to put you in the best position possible, right? After going through, so many teams, so many leagues, all this work to get to where you are now, how does that feel, succeeding in that way?
Yeah, man, it's been a journey. It's definitely been a journey. Just hearing from old teammates, current teammates, just their excitement. Just hearing that I deserve it. I feel like I deserve it. All of my road hasn't been straight. I had my bumps, had my ups and downs, but I stick forward, and I'm coming out, I would say victorious with it. I had to earn this. Last season I signed a 1-year deal, and I kind of had to bet on myself, and it definitely paid off, and I'm blessed.
The season, right? Obviously, you having the injury, it felt like BC kind of had some momentum, right? You went down. Talk about the injury, rehabbing from that. We've seen the X-rays, seen the photos and your tweets. What was that like going through?
It was tough. I went to I try to give myself 48 hours, to kind of flush everything, but it was really hard, especially off the season I was having. It was a little dark for a little bit, and I had to self-talk my way out of that and find a positive, and that was being around my teammates as much as I could. Just talking to family back home. It was definitely tough. Just on the sideline watching those games, it was not fun to see that, but I wanted to be out there as much as possible. Hey.
Yeah, it's okay. We can hear the dog. Yeah. It's all good. Yeah, if anyone's wondering, yeah, Lucky's got his dogs.
I got 2 puppies behind me, fighting all day. But yeah, it was definitely it was a struggle. So I was trying to get back out there as fast as possible. So yeah, I ended up coming back in 3 weeks, and I just had to deal with the pain. I covered it up with a pad, and rehab was what it was. But I had to get back out there.
You talk about betting on yourself, right? You really had to go out last year. The way the CFL is, right? These shorter contracts, right? Moving around a little bit more. Stressful as a player. Obviously now, right, it paid off and you're getting this extended offer, but what is it like having to, like, this, it's all on me here. It's not a gamble, but it is, right?
Right. No, like I said, it was definitely it wasn't really a gamble. I knew what I had to do. I know what I was capable of doing. But I just had to, obviously display that week in and week out. Can he be our number one? Can he be that playmaker week in and week out? And not just our returner. Just can he be our number one receiver, our next guy? And that's what I wanted to display every time I got out there. That I was the best. And up until that injury, I was displaying that, and it was just it was unfortunate, but I'm definitely trying to build off of it, and I gotta show more. I got paid more. You gotta do more.
Yeah, obviously, re-signing, going through these conversations, right? There's been talks, right, of what they want the team to be like next year, right? What are we trying to do with the Lions? Didn't end the season in the kind of the best route, right? Obviously we want to get to Edmonton at the end, but it was a struggle kind of there the last couple of weeks.
For sure.
Focus for the team moving forward. What are the conversations and building processes like now?
Yeah, it was hard. Just not knowing whether if we could even make the playoffs. There was times when we were still in the hunt, but we just couldn't win those close games. It was definitely tough. But you just kind of see the character around the room. You know what I mean? Guys didn't give up. Guys wasn't really quitting. We were still trying to fight, find a way. And at the end of the day, it was definitely a great note to end the season on a win. We're both coming in at the back end of the, you know what I mean, in the league as far as record. But it was definitely good for us to, you know, finish that win out strong, something to build off of, and just seeing the guys that's, you know what I mean, either sticking around or who should be a part of our next journey.
Do you sense a lot of optimism moving into 2022?
Yeah, I'm slowly looking around just to see what's next for us as far as who we're picking up, what's going to be like the final roster going into camp. But at the same time, like I said, I'm excited. You know what I mean, to meet, you know what I mean, to see my old teammates that re-signed with an extension, guys that's still under contract, new guys coming in, and try to build something special.
Now, President of Football Canada, Jim Mullen, will be upset you didn't wear the propeller hat today, but I think we have an ultimately equal hat, right? We have the rubber ducky bucket hat. Talk about, fashion choice. It seems like, even coming in with that, you really resonate with a lot of fans. They talk, the CFL can't market stars, right? Or you are someone, very recognizable, very well known, right? Both on the field and off. Talk about all that.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of like I wouldn't say really flashy, but like I kind of like stand out. You know what I mean? I want to do things kind of different. Some like others just somebody wouldn't do. I want to do it. You know what I mean? The propeller hat, I've been wearing that since college. I just randomly ordered it off of Amazon one day, and hell, I thought it was cool, so I was wearing it. You know what I mean? And I would wear it with like straight up outfits, like I'm going to the club, and next thing you know, it's a propeller hat. So like that was the focus, right? It was just my thing, and I still have one in my truck. I have a few that I just have around. But yeah, I don't know. I just like different stuff. I got this crazy book bag with a whole bunch of graffiti on it. The rubber duck, I had actually bought this while I was in Kamloops, my first time in Kamloops at training camp. I just went to a store and I was like, look at this bucket hat. This is kind of cool. Like, everyone has a plain black bucket hat, a white bucket, like just whatever, just a little logo on it. And I was like, man, I'm going to buy this little rubber ducky hat. But no, I like to do things differently, stand out a little bit.
Well, and what I think is so great about it is it stands out off the field, but then you can back it up. I mean, there's lots, we've just lived through the Antonio Brown stuff, right? I mean, there's lots of guys with, it's one thing to stand out off the field, but to be able to back it up, right, with playing. I guess talk about that, being able to kind of, walk the walk, but then, show up and do what you need to do.
For sure. No, you got to have that confidence, a little, some type of swagger about yourself. And I think I display that, very well. I'm not ashamed. I'm very comfortable with who I am. You know what I mean? I like to have fun. I like to enjoy my teammates, my company, but it's a time. So like when obviously I can wear this hat, I can wear my propeller hat, and I can show up to practice with it on. But when I put my helmet on and we in between those lines, like that's a different ball game. I go into a different focus, and I'm able to switch that gear. Like I'm able to switch that. You know what I mean? Some people not able to. You know what I mean? They take things too seriously or they play too much. It's a fine line between it, and as I got older, I figured that out, and I know how to channel it.
Do you enjoy, as being more of one of the fan favorites, right, especially of the Lions, across the league, getting that extra attention, people online and people, a lot's been made this week. I can't remember, someone was complaining about getting autographs in Saskatchewan or Winnipeg. I'm building the show we're going to talk about this week. I mean, do you enjoy that CFL fan appreciation?
Yeah, no doubt, man. I enjoy it because, like, you grow up, at least for myself, I didn't experience this. Like, football's always been my thing, but I didn't have like no hero as far as a football player. I didn't go to football games. I had my own football games. Like, Little League was my thing, right? So I was in Little League football. We did high school, middle school, obviously, travel league. But I didn't get to go see no Michael Vick. I didn't get to go. I didn't get to go to those NFL games to meet no special players. So like some kids just when they get to experience that, it's a different. It's a different ball game, and you just never know whose life you're changing. You don't know who's going through something. So I try to I walk around with a smile on my face probably 99% of the time. And I enjoy what I'm doing. So just for somebody to be like, hey, let me get an autograph, or hey, can we take a picture? I try to get as many pictures or autographs that I can, just because we don't know. It's just uncertain, and I'm blessed to be where I'm at. And for people to just say, hey, I'm a fan, that's love. And it's just something to look back on when I get older.
You said you didn't grow up idolizing a lot of players. So who do you? Is just internal growth, of wanting to be the best. You always hear, "Oh, I base my game off this," or "I look after." What do you do then?
I had a couple players when I got older that I was like, I want my game to be like around that, just because of their stature. So like Dante Hall was one of my favorites. Deshaun Jackson, because those are smaller receivers that do what I do as far as receiving or catching punt returns. In return game. So those are guys for myself who was just like, okay, they're really fast and they're really successful at what they do. And as I got older, I was really fast and I got really good at what I did. And I just had to figure out how to keep growing and keep getting better at what I was doing.
Goals for the future now, moving on, obviously, you've got the bag now, right? They call it. Now, what are we trying to accomplish here? I've heard that, Mr. Doman wants to host the Grey Cup, I think in a couple of years. what are we looking at here coming up for the Lions?
Yeah. Obviously I got my personal goals. I hit most of them, last year. Got my team goals. I'm trying to break some records. I was looking in the record book. I was trying to, writing some things down. But yeah, it would definitely just be nice to start, just clicking, winning games, get fans in the stands. And definitely I would love to host a Grey Cup, and bring that back to BC. And I'm just trying to be better than I was last year, to be honest. And I think I was okay last year, but I can definitely do better. Hopefully we get a full season. That'll definitely help, and just to stay healthy and just have fun and ball.
Yeah, obviously being named an all-star, only playing in 12 games, I think you did more than just good. Any of those goals you want to share? Any of those bulletin board records you're trying to break?
I'm looking to hit 2,000 all-purpose yards. I would definitely say that's very doable. And I don't know what their return record is in a season. So if I can break that, that'd be dope too.
Well, there you go. Well, I really appreciate this, having BC Lions reach out to us, get you on. I really appreciate that. It's one of those things, we reach out to a lot of, players and staff. It's nice to be asked, it's like when you're dating or whatever, it's nice to be asked. It's nice to not always have to be the one asking. So we really appreciate it. We're obviously huge BC Lions fans here on the podcast and obviously big fans of your work. So best of luck for the season. And I'm glad that everything's coming together. It seems like, the guys that deserve it are getting what they want, getting what they need to succeed right now. So I think it's been good.
Definitely, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Happy New Year.
Well, we have my arch rival nemesis, Daniel Austin, joining us on the podcast. Danny, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I mean, I feel like we're over the nemesis. We were nemesises. I don't know if that's how you pluralize nemesis, but during the spring 2021, and but I was so happy to meet you at Grey Cup and hang out with you and the wife, I believe.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I have said, look, I didn't love the way the XFL stuff was reported in Canada. I think I maybe put some of that on you guys because people were going on and talking about stuff that I don't think they really knew. I think as men, we admit when we were wrong, and I got nothing but respect. And honestly, I think it's so cool that you guys are down there doing what you do and supporting our league and shining a spotlight. So, it's an honor to be here talking to you, man. And I'm glad I got to meet you, and we got to bury the hatchet a little bit.
Yeah, got to hang out, got to spend Grey Cup together. This is exciting because we've lived through a CFL season now. So when we're in the off season, I have genuine questions, right? When all these things come up now, because I'm seeing, you guys and everyone reporting stuff. First off, Derek Dennis going to be on our show next week. Exciting, re-signed it with Calgary. Talk about how big of a deal is that for the Stampeders?
I mean, I think it's big. I guess for people who don't know, I am the beat reporter for the Stampeders. We should probably get that out there.
I should probably do that. Calgary Sun Herald, Danny Austin. Yes,
exactly. So I've been covering the team since 2016. In 2016, Derek Dennis was the most outstanding offensive lineman. Signed with Saskatchewan the next year. Didn't have a great year. Came back to Calgary for 2 more, and he's just been an all-star. He's arguably I think at his best is quite possibly the best left tackle in the league. If he's not, he's right there in that conversation. The question mark, and he'll be able to answer sort of some of the financials, I'm sure. I'm not sure he's going to go into full detail. He hasn't played since 2019, right? He actually is a guy who went into free agency. I reported on it at the time. He wanted to be sort of an A-level, pay me like a 1, pay me like, a star. And the Stampeders, I mean, there was no hard feelings, but it wasn't in their budget and they let him walk. And I don't know that the offers came in free agency. So he actually went XFL. Was with the New York Guardians, didn't play in a game because COVID came and unfortunately messed with that league. And I do say unfortunately, because I think that league was doing good things. And then signed with Edmonton, didn't want to play with them. So sat out the year and now he's back. So, I mean, the question is, this guy turns 34 during the season. He's had some knee issues. He says he's fully healthy. Look, if he's back and is still capable of playing at the level he is, that's a huge signing for the Stampeders. I wouldn't be surprised if they're still trying to have a guy like Ucombre Williams, who was the starting left tackle this year, also in the mix, just in case injury issues, which they've both had. But look, if Derek Dennis is the player who he was in 2018, 2019, solidifies that offensive line in a real way, assuming they get the other guys re-signed, and it could be huge. I mean, he's such a character. He's a great guy. You guys are going to love having him on the show. He's honestly one of the best guys, and I think he understands the media landscape, and he understands that you got to show a little bit of personality, and he does that. So he's a fan favorite here, but it could be a really big signing.
Yeah, it's just, we're seeing a lot of these players and quarterbacks, and I want to talk about the quarterback stuff too, but we're seeing a lot of these guys get paid, right? Dane Evans just came out, right? He's got his big, but then what does that mean for Mazzoli? I mean, I guess it's just so much different than like the NFL where the salary cap, right? There's just so much less money to go around when you have guys that really deserve to get paid or want to get paid to be where they want to be, right?
And I mean, going into the 2019 season, the 3 big really quarterback signings were Bo Levi Mitchell stayed, big money contract in Calgary. Mike Riley left Edmonton, the biggest money contract in BC, and then Edmonton responded by signing Trevor Harris. Well, none of them will win a playoff game. Unless I'm completely crazy, I don't believe that Edmonton or BC have made the playoffs, right? So that's where you find this balance where when you are trying to pack those things in, look, the quarterbacks are always going to be the big headliners, but I don't always know that you want to be paying that much of your cap in the CFL. It's not the NFL. It's not any other professional sports league, but you do need that quarterback. But it's honestly I'm kind of happy, and I know we're going to get more into detail, so I'm kind of trying to avoid jumping into the quarterback question. But the more interesting part for me with the CFL is stuff like the Stampeders signed Jake Mayer. Obviously, that's huge, but getting Reggie Bagleton back, getting Trey Roberson back, those are NFL guys. They left the Stampeders after 2019. They're being paid a lot of money. So where is that money then going to come from? where are they looking and saying, okay, we're going to pay a little bit less for that left tackle. I doubt that they're paying less for the left tackle, but so it's that juggling act. And I will say that historically, the Stampeders have probably done a better job with that than anyone else. If you haven't followed the league for a long time, they traded away a guy like Charleston Hughes just because they thought he was getting towards the end, and they had a ready-made replacement at the time in Jaguar Davis. So John Huffnagel, the Stampeders president and GM, is famous for letting guys walk right before, like right when they're still producing, they're right before, which is why a guy like Derek Dennis in his mid-30s being brought back, offensive line, you and I both know, O-linemen, like that takes a toll on the body. So it's interesting. I don't know if I fully answered your question, but I just kind of talked about what I'm interested in. And as you know, we might as well tell, I somehow have lost a pot of coffee. So if I come across as distracted, I just have no idea. Like, I made it, I brought it over to the computer, and it's gone. So very weird day.
Well, and like you were saying with Charleston Hughes, then he was let go, right? Or he wasn't picked up again by the Argos, right, at the end of the season. Am I remembering?
He was ultimately, they released him. And we'll see. That's going to be very interesting because Charleston did not have a great year in 2021. He is a big money guy, right? Like Charleston, I'm pretty sure he's got more sacks than any active player in the CFL right now, has been a top defensive end. I think that we all had questions going into 2021 about how the Argos were going to afford all of these guys. They traded away Arbuckle, which obviously saved a fair bit of money. But Charleston Hughes, is he going to get another contract? I think it's going to be one of the big stories going into free agency, because you want to see guys who have given so much to the league go out on their own terms, right?
So I want to talk about this Calgary quarterback situation is confounding to me. So, we haven't lived through the Bo Levi, right, legendary status, right, that he is in the league.
Yeah.
I know him as someone that trash talked the XFL, right, got hurt in, was it week 2, with his ankle foot injury?
He got hurt in week 1, but played in week 2, a fractured fibula, which is sort of upper leg. I can go into the details of why that's not as big a deal as people made it out to be, but yes.
Yeah. So, and then we bring in, rookie Jake Mayer, right? Did phenomenally, right? Really did a good job, played well. The team didn't win a lot, but it didn't seem like he ever put anyone in any position, right, where, it was on him, he threw 4 picks or whatever. So now we're back this season. We've restructured Bo's contract. Where are we at now with what's going on? And then Tommy Stevens, right, got signed as well.
Yeah, so Tommy Stevens, let's treat Tommy Stevens as what he is. He'll be competing for the third stringer job. Basically, with the Bo restructuring, he was paid a lot, didn't play every game. He hasn't played every game in 2019 or 2021. The stats have come down. Ultimately, I think teams have realized you don't want to, as we were saying, pay your quarterback that much. But Bo is restructured. This is not the first time he's restructured his contract. Oftentimes, it'll be like, they'll move bonuses forward so that they come at the end of the last season under the cap. But, effectively, I should have the numbers in front of me, but they save a minimum, I believe, of $40,000, no matter what, on his previous contract. And then a bunch of the other money is tied to how much he plays. Not tied to, touchdowns and interceptions, but literal game time. That allowed them effectively to keep Jake Mayer. And I think that's important because I asked Jake at the end of the season, do you want to be starting in 2022? And he was like, well, that's obviously obviously. When he re-signed in Calgary, he said, look, and it's the best quarterback room in the league. Dave Dickinson's star in this league in his day. Mark Mueller is a great quarterbacks coach. John Huffnagel is also a former coach. And then you have Bo. So Jake ultimately felt like, look, I'm 24. I'm going to have time to be a starter. The best thing for my development is to continue growing in that environment rather than go to, let's be honest, I think I'm allowed to swear, like a shit show team. And then you're the starter, but you put up terrible stats and you don't develop and you might even regress. So I think that was his thinking. But I don't know if he resigns if Bo has more than a year left on his deal, right? So I think that what this really allows the Stampeders to do is, look, Bo's going to be the starter next year. They have concerns about his shoulder. He has concerns about his shoulder. He's acknowledged that. But you think you might have the quarterback of the future in the dressing room, so you're going to get that better look, and then ultimately it allows you to make a decision on Bo's future at the end of next season. But it's a bit of a coup for them. I didn't think they were going to be able to keep Jake. I honestly, like, as you said, I mean, first quarterback in CFL history to throw for 300 yards in his first 3 starts. I will also say that, like, the Stamps didn't dumb down the playbook for him. Like, they were like they put him in and he was ready to go. He wasn't perfect. I think he went 1-2 in those games, and that's okay. It is worth noting, I believe Bo ended up with a winning record this season. So for all of the people who are criticizing Bo, he actually had a better winning percentage than Jake. But Jake's 24, so and I don't know. I covered Bo those glory years that you referred to. Man, he was so good, and I still think he has it. And to the people who may have only seen him this year, or the people who kind of jumped on him and decided he's done, this is a guy in his 30s, had shoulder surgery after the 2019 season, had to recover, 2020 canceled, comes back, has a groin injury, and can't really practice in training camp. There should not be an expectation that athletes are always able to perform at their highest level. We have to look at those other circumstances and how they contribute to performance. And everything was against Bo this year. He had new receivers. It was a tough go, and he still got them to the playoffs. So I would just caution people writing the Bo Levi Mitchell obituary. He's not done yet.
But you think this might be his last year?
I think it might be his last year in Calgary. I think that success in the CFL at quarterback is really, really difficult to predict. I would point you to Cody Fajardo. I'm not going to name names, but I was on, Saskatchewan radio stations before the 2021 season, and I was just like, I don't believe in Cody Fajardo, and they were like, look at the numbers. How can you not? And I said, I'm just not sure. I don't think he's beaten any of the top teams in the league. Let's see him do it. Now people are all down on him. I actually think he's probably better than people are giving him credit for. But I look at a guy like Zach Collaros. I mean, you see, and I know you know the history a little bit here, but like you guys see Zach Collaros, oh man, he's won 2 Grey Cups in a row. He was almost out of the league 3 weeks before the 2019 playoffs. And no one thought he could do what he's done the last 2 years. Now he's back. He's a Hall of Famer all of a sudden. He's, arguably the best quarterback in the league. Like Mike Riley, the Lions signed him to over $700,000, hasn't helped him make the play. Like quarterback success is hard. So I think getting more time with Jake, but everything I saw from Jake Mayer in those 3 games and then sort of in relief at times suggests to me that he's a starting quarterback in the CFL. And if you think you might get, even after this year, you might get 2 years with Bo, maybe 3 more years. You might get 8 or 9 with Jake. You got a loyalty to the guy who won you 2 Grey Cups, but how do you make that calculation? I don't know. I'm not speaking for the Stamps, but I can see this being his last year in Calgary for sure.
I don't think you were surprised because I had heard you speak, I think even on Rod's show about, people were down on Calgary, slow start, right? What's going to happen? World's collapsing. And then you said, I don't know if the book's written on this yet, and then here they, came in, destroyed BC. We were supposed to be at that game, got detained at the border, really went on a run for it. I mean, is this resilience of the team, right? Bo coming back. I mean, what accounted for that late run that Calgary had?
I mean, I'll give you all of them. I'll try to do this rapid fire so that I'm not taking up the next tournament. First of all, they were never as bad as they looked. They should have beaten Toronto in week 1. Bo had a fractured fibula. Kadeem Carey, I think, had 1 fumble the entire year. This is like the story with the Stampeders. All year, it was like one bad thing would happen and they would get punished for it and they would lose. I believe BC was in week 2. You got a quarterback playing with a fractured fibula. Not a good idea. They still were in that game. Like they were losing games that they probably should have won. And arguably the game against Montreal that they won, but like they were never that bad, but they were the youngest team in the league. So it was always going to take time for it to develop. They had absolutely no pressure early in the season from the defensive line. The defensive line went from like last in the league in sacks to I think 3rd or 4th by the end of the season. And that really is the key. A guy like Mike Rose, defensive tackle, absolute stud. Might be, in my opinion, he should be talked about among the best defensive players in the league. Derek Wigan, one of the best Canadian tackles. So the defensive line really, really stepped up. The defense, in my opinion, was honestly, it was right there with the Bombers. I think it was the number, in my opinion, the Bombers, Stamps, and Ticats should have been talked about the same way in terms of their defense. I think that they were the 3 best defenses in the league. People from Saskatchewan may take umbrage with that. And it's why the key now for the Stamps, forget free agency, it's getting everyone re-signed because they were young. You did this development. There were little other things, but they were never that far off. And then I honestly think that, like, my line going into the season was, no matter what else is going on, they have Bo. And Bo just wasn't early in the season able to perform at the level that he was supposed to. So you weren't stealing those wins because of your quarterback. And once he kind of settled in, he had a few bad ones near the end of the season too. But once they figured out what they had in him, and once Dickinson figured out what plays to run with him, what to do, they were a much better team. But ultimately, like, I do really believe football, like, you know, you never want your football team in the NFL to be playing its best game at Thanksgiving. You want them to be building and growing, and the Stamps did that, and then got into the playoffs and played a Saskatchewan team that, like, I do not understand how the Stampeders lost that game. They missed 3 field goals. They fumbled a punt. They allowed their only kick return touchdown of the entire season. All of that happened, and the Riders still needed double overtime to beat them. Like, the Stamps were right there. And Saskatchewan played Winnipeg pretty tough. I think if you look at the playoffs this year, West semifinal, Calgary probably should have won. Instead, Saskatchewan won. West final, Saskatchewan probably should have won. Instead, Winnipeg won. I think the Grey Cup, the Ticats probably should have won. Instead, the Bombers won, right? Like, football, sometimes it's as much about your mistakes as it is what you did right. And the Stamps just made a few too many mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, kneeling down, 1 point difference in the Grey Cup, it's a whole different.
Well, you were in the press room, and, like, it's so hard when you have both coaches saying this was the right decision.
Yeah,
this was the right decision. We know it was not the right decision. It's insane. Well, it's not. I don't want to say insane, but, like, obviously he should have run it out, tried to get to the 30-yard line. He had the space to do it.
Yeah,
and then he won that game. Like.
I want to talk, I don't know if it's micro or macro. I want to talk a larger sense now. We were together, Ambrosi. I don't want to talk like the 4 downs and all that stuff, because I think that is a little pie in the sky. But in terms of, actual changes next year, right? Bringing in Genius Sports, working on marketing, right? Working on profit sharing. What struck you or didn't strike you about these seemingly large changes, right? That are coming to the league and attempting to kind of move on from whatever that was talking with the XFL?
Yeah, and I'm still not 100% convinced that those talks are dead and buried forever, right? Like, I don't know. My opinion on that was always that those conversations were being led effectively by the Argos. I mean, I think we all sort of understand that now. Argos are owned by Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, Bell, which owns TSN. Like, I just think that we can see, if Bell is in on an XFL merger, it's not done. If they wanted it, doesn't matter. Like, they are the biggest financial stakeholder in terms of TSN. So I just don't think that the XFL talks will ever be fully off the table unless this league ultimately is able to stabilize the markets in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. And I'm not saying that Montreal and Vancouver are particularly unstable, but I do think that we see that there is an issue in Toronto. So first of all, yeah, I would never say that the XFL talks are fully done. There's smart business people involved on both sides. And if the business case is there and there's an existential crisis in the CFL where survival is at stake, of course they will go back and revisit that. I don't doubt that for a second. Man, I can't, like, the Genius Sports thing, I thought was the way that it was presented was asinine. I was sitting there and I was like, just tell us what this is. Just tell us what Genius Sports is. Because here's the thing. If you, like, I don't understand it completely, but, like, one of my best friends works in data analytics, right? Data analytics is how it's audience, it's on-field product, it's everything. So of course the CFL needs to be embracing that. And it sounds like sort of Genius Sports is bringing that data analytics. And my understanding is some of that is going to be actual in-game stuff. Like, it's not just how you engage with your audience. Most teams already have contracts with data analytics firms to deal with audience. That can only be good, right? I mean, that can only be good. So like by and large, that's why I never understood the way that it was presented to us. Was I was sitting there and I was like, all of us are going to agree that this is a good idea, but why aren't you telling us what the idea is, right? Like, it's hard to give it a thumbs up when you don't, they won't explain it. So look, I ultimately think that the league surviving 2021 was the point. They got through. That is, everyone deserves a pat on the back. We saw, I mean, man, I don't know what it's like in the States, but like, it's crazy that 2 days after Grey Cup, Omicron just blew up. There wouldn't have been a Grey Cup if that happened a week earlier. They would have had, I mean, or at least there would have been no fans in the stands. And I don't think in media we would have been doing any in person. So like full marks there. I think the offense will rebound a little bit. I think that like people are so quick to jump and say, oh, scoring's down. Yeah, there were some bad games this year. There were some games where I was sitting there being like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how is this where I'm at? But ultimately, like, you get those 2 preseason games back. You get potentially an influx of talent that sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. And I think that part fixes itself. But the larger issue with the CFL is always going to be that it is losing the younger audience. That is true where I am in Calgary. Attendance has been slowly going down. It's great that Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Hamilton can sustain or are doing really, really well. I think Ottawa comes back quickly. But in the bigger markets, like, you've got to figure out a way to be engaging with the audience. And people want these one-step, do more TikTok. Like, no, man, like that's like, that might be a piece of it, a very small piece. But I think that there is right now a perception among non-football fans that, like, you don't need to pay attention to the CFL. And there are markets in Canada where, we don't like, there's maybe one person covering the team. That's a Canadian media issue. We've been hit so hard financially over the last decade that we've just lost people. But if you're a fan of one of those teams, or you might be a fan and you might be considering going to one of their games, you don't even know who the players are. That's really, really hard. So I ultimately think that it's not marketing necessarily, it's messaging. And it's why like having guys like you come in and talk about it is so important. And having Derek Dennis, I mean, Derek Dennis going on your show, people are going to get to know Derek Dennis. That might, that can drive interest, but it's just, you need more content and you need more connection. And I don't know where that comes from. And, certainly I'm doing my best here in Calgary, but you don't always know if it's getting anywhere. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I ultimately believe that with the CFL, the product needs to sell itself on some level. And I don't know that it did a perfect job this year, but you also need people selling the league. And I do think that we need more of that. And hopefully, when we're allowed full stadiums across the country, when we have a full schedule, all of that, hopefully there's a little bit more money that's directed towards that side of it.
It's hard. You were talking some of those games. Like, I remember there were some of those like Tuesday games where it'd be like, the Red Blacks against the Elks, or whatever. Like, there's like 6,000 people in the stands. Like, I don't know, is anyone watching this? Like, is this existing in the vacuum? But, it's like, and we're dealing with this, with the USFL and everything else. We have these other leagues, CFL, do more outreach with these, the NFL doesn't need to talk to anybody, but a lot of these other leagues, like, I do, and I'm really glad that like they, obviously gave us passes to come up and cover all this, but like, you should be doing that a lot, because you don't, like, I would take who I could get in terms of like, not that, you got to pick up the ugly girl at the dance, but like I would take anyone that was talking about the CFL at all right now, just in terms of like, kind of getting the message out there. So.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I've covered the NHL. Like, I've done full seasons as an NHL beat reporter. Like, that is a bigger beat that gets me, more engagement, like more all of those things. Man, I prefer the CFL. Like, and the reason I prefer the CFL is the players. Is like they've got these amazing personalities. Like they are incredible athletes, and I think like it's often what I like the American perspective on the CFL. Canadians have this thing where it's like, oh, well, these guys aren't in the NFL, so they can't be good. Meanwhile, Americans are like, oh, I didn't go to Alabama. I still supported my college football team.
Yeah.
You know, like I recognize Americans seem to recognize that like these athletes are pretty friggin' amazing. I don't know how to convince Canadians that they're wrong. That just because I'll use soccer, like you got the Premier League, you got La Liga, you got the Bundesliga, right? Like the Serie A too, like the big four: Italy, Spain, Germany. I mean, like the fans in Sweden still support their Swedish Premier League, right? Like it's not the fact that it's not Arsenal and Chelsea and Man City doesn't mean that like it's lesser or less like valuable. And I honestly have found that I don't know how to convince Canadians that like, no, the fact that this isn't the NFL, that's not fully the point. It's still amazing athletes who a lot of these guys, like I think about a guy like Reggie Begelton. Like Reggie Begelton was ready to go be an NFL. He played in NFL games. He might not have been coming out of college. Trey Roberson was a quarterback in college, needed a couple of years in the CFL before going to the NFL. You and I both know not everyone's ready at the exact same age at 22, 23. I wasn't ready to be a reporter at 22, 23.
Maybe still not. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no. But I know, but you know, and like, so I think that it's so easy to make the sell, but it sometimes falls on deaf ears. And it's why I appreciate the American perspective, because I'll talk to NFL reporters down in the States who are obsessed with the CFL. They love it. And there's no reason why Canadians should have this weird, whether it's an inferiority or superiority complex.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my last point would be like, at least the CFL, you know, for all of its faults, they do carry themselves. And I've told Dorothy this before. You know, I think the CFL media is sometimes better than what the CFL deserves, right? Because you guys all like it only matters as much as we care it to matter, right? If it doesn't matter, then it's
true
like
of sports in general. But yes,
yeah. But that's, I mean, I am someone that's watched wrestling for 30 years, right? It only matters because we pretend that belt matters. You know, it doesn't really matter unless it matters. So you know, I think the CFL at least has that right in this, you know, 100-year lineage and all these champions and all these stats and all these things, and a media that really values that right and places value on that. But it is hard. Like, it's like that. I mean, to me, that is why the biggest issue I had with the CFL XFL thing is I'm like, I know that we have 6 months and you guys have 100 years, but it's the same idea of like, we really care about this thing and other people are telling us it's not good enough. Right. And so the mentality is still there. I know that we don't have nearly the legacy.
No. And the mentality is there. And it's interesting. Like, I mean, not to unpack that too much, but like, I never said the XFL isn't good enough. What I was worried about was that Canadianness that I think makes the CFL special, no matter what. And I think you understand it because you've been up a couple times, but like, no matter what, like we're 40 million people, you guys are 350, we will lose. You know, like the American market will be more important no matter what. So no matter what, we will lose the Canadianness of the CFL. And that's what I was like, no, the inherent value for someone like me is that this is our one true national sport that we have that's just our own. And I was like, I just don't want it to get swallowed up. No one should ever have said, look, the XFL, if you watched XFL in 2020, man, that league was doing a lot of things really, really well. And there'd be nothing better for the CFL than getting some of their marketing people in. It was so innovative, and I think that's important. Sorry, that's just a side note.
No, you're good.
Anyone who said the XFL wasn't good enough, that was the wrong. And yeah, I'm being a dick and pretending that everything I say is right, but like that was the wrong argument against the XFL merger.
Well, Danny, this has been good. I appreciate you coming on, even with Sans Coffee. Hopefully you can track that down and the backlight, the strobe lights, everything else.
So weird.
But it's been good. It's been an adventure here, even just on the Zoom call. It's good. It's good. We finally got you on and we're talking, you know, actual
anytime, man.
CFL football, which is exciting.
No, it's awesome. And honestly, like the next month should be interesting. We got free agency coming up. And then it sounds like in my neck of the woods, they'll be having sort of GM and head coach meetings in mid-February. So, you know, COVID permitting, we'll be there and there should be a lot of stuff coming out because it's going to be, I think this season is going to be more interesting than last season. I think that like a lot of teams needed last year to almost get ready for this year. So it should be a fun one.
Surviving, I think, was the goal last year. I mean that. Like, it's just, we just have to do this. We got to get through.
I tweeted it. I don't think we gave enough credit to them for making it happen. Yeah. And that's the players, that's the management, that's everyone. But yeah, you should honestly, I know your listeners don't care, but like, you can tell. I spent like 5 minutes. I have a very small apartment being like, where is my French press? This is so weird.
Danny, I will send you on your way. I appreciate you making the time today.
Anytime, man. We'll do it again soon, I hope. Cheers.
Well, we have Paul Reeths here, USFL historian, author of a book on the USFL, a good person to talk to today, kind of old USFL, new USFL. How are you doing today, Paul?
I'm well. How about you?
We're good. I was expecting a little bit more USFL news today. We had our big Colin Cowherd news drop last week with the coaches. I just thought there's no way they don't do this. The same thing this week. We do the other 4 coaches. Just generally overall thoughts from you. First off, headed into now, we are midway through January. How are we feeling about this new USFL?
I really feel like they're kind of behind. So they haven't announced half the coaches, as you mentioned. We had the drop last week on 4 of them. And we still don't officially know where the single site is going to be. I mean, everybody knows it's Birmingham. Apparently the last kind of public hurdle in Birmingham was cleared earlier this week, late last week. But they still haven't announced anything. So they haven't sold one ticket yet. And regardless of how important TV is for this venture, it's not going to look great if you don't have anybody in the place.
Well, and even just, we've talked a lot in the past, XFL 2020 did a good job, right, in the cities, team presidents and staff and all those, working well, right? Seattle was good, New York. Even just having a couple people in Birmingham saying, hey guys, this is coming in 2 months, get excited for it. We have this coming up. I mean, even if you're not going to talk about the Pittsburgh Maulers or whatever, just getting the people in Birmingham excited.
Yeah. It's been odd how quiet it's been that here we are after the new year now. You can understand, particularly around the holidays, but if things were a little bit quiet, but then you would expect kind of a ramp up almost immediately after that. And we just haven't seen that. And the other kind of part of this is because they are doing a single site, yet they've named other locations. What does that look like this first season? Do they do anything in those locations? Do they at least introduce the team or the head coach at some point in those markets? Or is it all just going to be Birmingham based? And if so, I guess there's a lot of those questions that are yet outstanding about this league.
Yeah, we put in our episode last week and on Twitter, one of our listeners, Max, is very interested in all this stuff, and we kind of posted the list of things we don't know yet, right? Okay, so even if we have 4 head coaches, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, obviously the players, how much are people going to get paid? How are all, there's just a myriad of, and I just thought, if you do just a little bit every week, okay, this Thursday it's coaches, next week it's, okay, then we finally announce Birmingham. Okay, now I'm like, okay, now we've missed another week now. It's just a finite amount of time. Because I hate to be I've always tried to quell people's, right, like this is the spring league with different paint, right? But it is getting to the point where I'm a little, it seems odd.
And part of it, I think that it is odd. I think you're exactly right. But what makes it seem even more odd is contrasting it with the last spring effort, which was the XFL. And, we knew pay scale. We had kind of this rollout of coaches and team identities, and it was all well ahead of the game. And so contrasting it with the last thing that we saw, it seems like it's way behind.
And I want to get into more USL. The concern has been brought up, at least with a lot of the writers and people that we work with this week, that right, XFL pushed to next year. Everyone kind of knows that now. So now, if this comes out this year and lays an egg or doesn't perform or doesn't whatever, right, it's just more. And I try not to be the XFL homer, right? We try to kind of look at everything, but it does. add another fuel to the fire of like, oh yeah, just spring football. See, look at this. And I mean, that's what's concerning now is we have another venture that could potentially rise and fall like the AAF. It doesn't help the argument.
No, it doesn't. And because we're coming on the heels of, the AAF failing 8 weeks into its season, the XFL having to call off the final half of its season due to the COVID crisis. And then if you have, the single site setup that doesn't work one way or the other, whether it's because it doesn't end up looking good on TV or whatever, it really does feel kind of like a third strike. The odd thing to me, though, is that more than at any time in the last 30, 40 years, you have multiple groups that want to do this and groups with money. You have the Redbird Capital people with the XFL. You have Fox Sports with this USFL. I think that these larger, more well-funded organizations are seeing some kind of an opportunity here, in particular with being in on the ground floor with ownership of a sports property. Will that result in some patience? I don't know, but it is a little bit heartening to see that groups with money multiple groups are willing to take this chance now.
Well, even this week I saw that they always do it every year, the 100 top broadcasts in America, right, on TV. I think 79 of them were football, right? And so, I tweeted, I'm like, this is why we still try to do spring football, because you have all the people. Why are they trying to? Because 8 out of 10 of the most highest watched programs on TV are still football. I don't think Major League Baseball was even in any of them. Don't tell my co-host Paul.
And NFL ratings were up 10% this year. If you have been looking at this over the last 4 or 5 years, everybody, the NFL's, they're going to bottom out like everybody else on network television. Ratings are going down. The NFL is one of the stalwarts, live sporting events still seem to have a place on network TV and for driving what network TV is trying to do. But inevitably, that's going to go down. Well, instead, it went up by double digits this year, 10%. That is not a small thing. So, if a spring league can figure out a way to capture even a small percent of that, and it's what everybody's been trying to do, it's easier said than done. But again, that's going to be tempting for real money to look at and say, boy, if we can establish something and hold it for a while, we'll lose money in the short term, but the asset value is going to skyrocket.
As someone that, lived through USFL, at a young age, right? I listened to your interview with Mark, but, lived through that, here you run a site, preserving, video and historical, right, with the USFL, have written a book on it. Did you ever really think that you would be on multiple podcasts within months talking about the USFL in the year 2021, 2022?
It's crazy that the league has that kind of staying power, especially in the public consciousness. Let's be honest about what Fox is doing here. They have no ties whatsoever to the former USFL. They believe that there is value yet in that name and in the team names. And that's why they went with USFL and why they're going with team names that the USFL had used. And a lot of it is because of guys like me who have such a fond memory of this league that they're hoping to trade in on that nostalgia.
Do you agree with their assessment that there is enough name recognition and enough people that still? Do you buy into that?
It's a value add to me, but it is not a driver. It's one of those things that may help hook some 40, 50, 60-year-old guys into this, where maybe they wouldn't give a spring league a chance. Maybe they didn't give the XFL or AAF a chance, and they might be more inclined to check into this. But you're going to have to present a good product on TV and on the field in order to keep them engaged.
It's just so weird. I remember when they came out and you had Steve Earhart, right, wrote the foreword to your book, when all this came out and we had Steve on and he's like, no one has reached out to anybody, they haven't. And you would just think, if you're going to go through the work of acquiring all of these trademarks and doing the cities and doing the logos and that you wouldn't have, whatever handful of guys are still around, come on and advocate and do promo videos or social media. It's so weird to me.
I completely agree. Carl Peterson, longtime GM of the Chiefs, who was the GM of the USFL's most successful franchise, the Stars. Why don't you get, if your intent is to honor the old USFL by using the name, by using the team names again, these guys should be involved. It shouldn't be an end around, sneakily grabbing the team names and some version of the logo. If there's something that's been off-putting about this new effort, it's that they kind of tried to work around these guys rather than working with them. And these were the guys who made it happen last time.
Well, and it's not, we talk about, management and Brian and everyone else, but ultimately this is a Fox Sports venture, right? This isn't like, you and I are sitting there, hey, we're going to try this and we're going to, make some t-shirts, or we're going to, sell, right? We're going to relicense the old video. We are putting this on national TV for a national audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Fox has ownership. They're the driver on this, regardless of who acquired the IP on it. Fox owns it. So it's going to be their name on the product, and they're going to drive every decision. So I certainly hope that they re-examine the decision to just work around some of the guys who did this the first time, and instead see what they can do to fold them into the product.
When Dale Johnston, right? He's like the exec VP of talent. I can't remember his, title, one of the hires up. He was doing an interview a couple weeks ago, right after they came out with the city names, right? Because, Pittsburgh and all the, this first kind of swath we have. And, the interviewer said, I really thought you guys would target non-NFL markets, right? Like obviously St. Louis with the XFL, but like San Antonio, Oakland, right? Things like this. And I get geographically what they're doing. And his response was, well, these were the trademarks that we had. These were the cities that we acquired, right? These were the ones that had like the most staying power. And I thought, to be basing cities in 2022 off of decisions that were made right in 1982, 3 in terms of does that seem weird to you?
It seems absolutely weird to me that any part of where you choose to locate a franchise would be based on obtaining a name. You pick your best markets. This is a hard enough business. Spring football has proven that time and time again. This is a hard enough business without tying your own hands on market choice. And, you mentioned two great markets, St. Louis in the XFL and San Antonio in the AAF. What can you do if you go into non-NFL markets? And we've been talking about a non-NFL market in Birmingham, of course. But so many already have NFL teams. And yeah, I absolutely do believe that you need a mix of major markets, which likely already have NFL teams, but you also have, I think there's also opportunity in non-NFL markets. And I hope the league did not tie its own hands just based on the intellectual property it could, register.
Yeah. The world is, and I just can't imagine like, even, and obviously it's the bubble season, but once we move out, I can't imagine even the Vipers coming back in the XFL now. And obviously we're waiting on those announcements, but we have the Tampa Bay, right? Like champions of the world. And then 2 months later, like, oh, we're going to go watch I just can't, certain cities work, right? Like Seattle, maybe there's enough stuff where we get excited. We had good attendance there, but I just don't think all those markets, when you have an exceptional football team, and then also trying to support that spring league. Yeah,
and it's why you have to do your research on the market. Tampa, it was a little bit of more of a slog there for the XFL than maybe it was in Seattle. Both NFL markets, both with successful teams at the time. And yet, one kind of worked well and the other was pretty iffy. Like I said, it's just really hard to find these markets, hard to identify. There's a lot of research that goes into it. So just, basing it even partially on what names you can register it seems odd.
Why do you think the USFL back when you fell in love with it, when, millions of people, right, what was it about that really spiked that interest that people had?
So, a young man just getting into football. Here you have an additional 18 weeks of regular season, more than 20 weeks total with the postseason of professional football coming right on the heels of the Super Bowl. So your football fandom didn't have to take a half-year break at that point. You were able to roll right into a brand new season, brand new teams and identities and players to learn. And I can't stress this enough. The original USFL was a major league. It competed for the best available talent. Nobody in any of the big four sports has been able to establish a competing major league since the USFL folded. Hasn't happened in baseball, basketball, hockey, or football. It really has become, because of television money, too expensive to even try. And that doesn't mean that, what you would have to consider as kind of a minor developmental league level league aren't fun to watch. I've enjoyed all of them, but they're an entirely different animal than what the original USFL was, which was taking NFL first and second round draft picks, which was picking former MVPs off NFL rosters, which was grabbing a Heisman Trophy winners right out of college, which grabbed its, a few Hall of Famers. So, the USFL was so different than what we've seen develop that to expect that same kind of interest and success is probably not going to happen today anymore. But it doesn't mean that what they're trying to do today with these spring leagues can't be successful on its own level.
And you say it's because it's too expensive now to compete.
It's too expensive to compete. I mean, you look at what offensive linemen make. So the original Michigan Panthers in 1983 started out 1-4. Their owner went out and signed 3 NFL offensive linemen. I don't think any of those guys cost him over $50,000 a year, maybe $50,000-$60,000 a year. Now, how many millions of dollars would that be just for your offensive line? The economics in the spring, because of the revenue that's available, just will not support that.
It's just hard. And even with the coaches that came out, right, we have some retreads, right? I mean, Bart Andrus, had success in Europe and then was obviously with the XFL in the spring league. You have Kevin Sumlin, right? Some of these guys that maybe didn't leave on the best of terms, but like they were talking about Gene Chisnick or whatever coming on, and it seemed like there was a lot of interest there. And then it came out where they had announced, that he was coming. There was the leak that he was coming. And then he got, it's going back to North Carolina, right? So you have, not only are you competing against the NFL, right, for talent in terms of staff, right, and coaches, but you're also competing against college teams. Because why would I sign for a 6 or, well, I guess it would be, 8 weeks plus. Why would I sign for a 16-week gig and then I'm not working in May, or I could, go work in North Carolina and work the rest of the year and probably make substantially more money.
Right. And that, I do hope we still have, as we mentioned, 4 of the coaches openings available. I do hope they sign, maybe an up and coming offensive coordinator. And it doesn't matter if anybody's heard of him. That was Steve Spurrier coming out of Duke when the Tampa Bay Bandits hired him in 1983. I think it's also maybe an opportunity for maybe a minority hiring, a guy who inexplicably has been, on the wayside, So I hope we do see some of that. These leagues present a lot of opportunity. And so I hope that it's not just about finding the best guys that we can afford. I hope that they do look at some other factors when naming the rest of the head coaches.
I think that's a great point. I mean, especially there's been a lot of conversation this week, right? Brian Flores, right, being let go in Miami. And it's like, we have so many few minority head coaches, right? To feel like he didn't, I think the sentiment, right, is that he didn't get a fair shake, maybe, had a winning record. And so, God, if we could start incorporating some more of these guys in and get more name recognition, get more females involved, get more everybody involved. I mean, it would be nice and just like the old white retreads again.
Yeah, and it's all about opportunity, and I think that hopefully the league sees that, and not just here's here's guys you've heard of, okay, but they've all been fired or 10 years away from the best job that they had, or and maybe it's an opportunity for them too to show what they can do and get another chance, which is great, but maybe some of the guys who haven't had, such a great chance or haven't had their chance yet, take a little bit of an early flyer on the guys. So I hope that brings maybe some diversity in offenses that we see on the field, not just in diversity in personnel, but in diversity in what they're willing to do on the field. The chances that they're willing to take, the kind of offenses that they run, maybe the kind of defenses and the special teams plays. So, these new leagues are a tremendous opportunity for new ideas and for new people to get a start.
I'm doing the math. I'm looking at my calendar here. So if, we're doing draft player selection, the 22nd, 23rd, of February. And then they're saying that training camps March 21st, right? So it's we're kicking off April 16th. You got 3.5-4 weeks. It's what that, and I think that is probably the problem that some of these head coaches that they are encountering, right? Is it's you're going to pay me what? And then I have 4 weeks to get, and I think that's why Bart Andrus was a really good hire because he had done the spring league, but you're not going to get everyone that wants to do that unless, like you said, it's someone that maybe was overlooked and is looking for an opportunity to really stand out. That was what the XFL was for PJ Walker and Taylor Heineke, right? Maybe this could be also for some of the staff and coaches.
Yeah, you certainly hope so. And I think it really does, as we kind of started out this conversation talking about, it behooves the league to move on it so that these guys can get their staff in place. That is a pretty short training camp, and we kind of saw how that burned the XFL, especially making a national TV debut when some of the product on the field the first couple of weeks looked shaky. I think we even saw that a little bit in the NFL this year with the reduced preseason. Those first couple of weeks, Green Bay looked like it thought it was the fourth preseason game when it opened against the Saints this year. Yeah. And then they went on a tear. It wasn't even the same team that we saw the rest of the year. So having that time, and especially when none of the guys have played together before, is going to be important.
Even the CFL suffered that this year, right? And they had,
yep.
And they never really got it together. Some would say that I would argue that they never really hit that full stride. This has been great. Weird week, right? We're kind of in this flux. I think you have good insights. Any other thoughts, concerns, or maybe positives before we let you go on this?
So, when I look at what the USFL is doing this year with the single site setup, in a year when everybody else is playing in home markets, essentially, I hope it's not throwing away a whole bunch of money unnecessarily. And I keep coming back to the United Football League, which came out when it launched a test season for outdoor football, which is being tested every week and has been for decades at the high school, college, and professional level. Why do you need to run a test season? Well, I guess I would like to know why a single site? It seems like a missed opportunity to me. So if the ratings tank because nobody in the home markets or any markets really has much of an interest in it, what does that look like going into next year? Don't you come into next year with an unnecessary strike against you already? Not to mention how many millions of dollars in the hole. I don't understand the single site setup.
It's an evolution of what Brian did with the spring league, and trying to get that. But when and I've gone back and forth about this, and I've even talked with Mark, that you've interviewed with when he was on our show a couple weeks ago. The spring league on Fox was pulling in 400,000, 450,000 viewers when they were on Fox, right? Some of the games were on FS1 or whatever. That's fine when you're not paying the players, right? When it's basically it's Survivor, right? We have a bunch of people that, we're not paying really, and they're coming in. I am terrified to see what these, what the players are getting paid, if that's ever announced, and then how much higher the stakes are for the ratings when you have a ton of player expense going out than when it was. Because that to me is the biggest difference between this and the spring league before.
And when you look at the original XFL and how tied it was to the ratings, you go into the season and NBC's our partner, Vince McMahon arm in arm with NBC, and then as soon as the ratings tank, NBC cancels their program. That's what television does. So, do we see the same kind of thing with Fox if this doesn't start off the way that they think? It's nice to come in with all these lofty expectations, and I don't wish them ill will. I just don't understand the approach, how late they have been to getting on so much of this, how there is almost this transition from the spring league, which wasn't really a pro league at all, to what they're doing now. I hope it works out okay.
And I mean, and I've talked to them, I've emailed the media people, I've said anyone that could come on, and they say, we're working through announcements. So I think except for maybe announcing coaches this week because he didn't have the 8th one locked in because Gene Chisnick stepped down. I mean, I think there is a plan. I just don't know if it is a good plan.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a plan. It's just how good is it, and do you have enough people with implementation? And it seems like so far it's been pretty slowly rolled out.
Paul, you killed it. I thought this was great. I appreciate your insights, and hopefully when we get to kick off, we can do a check-in. I assume we're getting kickoff. I mean, I don't doubt that this will field the play.
I think so. I think one way or the other, they have too much skin in the game at this point. Once you go public, I mean, it is Fox, so I can't see them just letting it die on the vine for some silly small reason. I think it's going to go.
Well, we'll check back in. I appreciate your time. Paul Reeths, author of the United States Football League. It's on Amazon. You can go pick it up. And then obviously USFLsite.com with a lot of the historical stuff on there. So
thank you for having me.
Welcome back to the show. Want to thank our guest, Lucky Whitehead. Congrats on the contract, homie. Get that bag. Danny Austin, and of course, Paul Reeths, all joining us. We got a great guest coming up next week. So stay tuned for that. What else is happening outside of the CFL though?
Yeah, so this is interesting. So this XFL stuff, and I want to get your take on this, Paul. So Saturday night, it was discovered from listener Max that Jim Monos, he is the senior director of football operations, recently signed with the XFL. Right, he just got brought in at the end of December. He has a podcast. It's not a very. I don't like to subscriber brag, but they got like 200 subscribers, right? I mean, it's called it. But they got like 150 listeners. It's not like a huge, but it's weird because it's like, it would be like if Danny Garcia had like a secret podcast, right? Like, right. He's like one of the, and what's weird to me is he was signed end of December, and this kind of went unknown for 2.5 weeks, which I was trying to explain to Dorothy, like, we know the second a new shirt is like put up on the shop with USFL or any of these things. And it's bizarre to me that this podcast would exist for 3 weeks now. I mean, it's existed for 100 episodes, but that this guy does this podcast. He's talking about the XFL. He's talking about getting hired by the XFL. So we tweet all this stuff out Saturday night. It's kind of made the rounds, right? Other shows and things, and people have commented on stuff, but I never actually listened to any of this till today. So we're getting ready for the show, and he's talking a lot. They're talking a lot about like trying to get Antonio Brown on, jokes like, well, I was asking like Russell Brand, like, should we bring Antonio Brown on? They're talking about like, they want to do, like Hard Knocks, but on steroids, right? We want to mic up the people. We want to show all this stuff. The one quote that I pulled, and I want to play it, and I want to get your opinion of this, and I think we're either going to have a lot of stuff to talk about or not a lot of stuff to talk about, depending on your reaction to this clip, Paul. So this is from the podcast. If you want to go, it's the Go Long podcast, and it's also on YouTube, but you could go like Spotify, whatever. It's like 36 minutes into the most recent episode from this last weekend. And the first voice you're going to hear is Jim. The second voice you're going to hear is Tyler. And they're talking about like rule changes to the XFL, kicking, and then they're going to transition into some stuff. And I want to get your thoughts on this, Paul. So I'm going to play this, and hopefully this will work good.
The other day, I brought up first to second quarter, any touchdown you score, you have to go for 2.
I like it.
Well, because it changed the whole game, right, for everybody. But, the counter to that is we might just use what the XFL had 2 years ago, where you can either go for 1 from the 3-yard line, 2 points from like the 5, or 3 points from the 10, which is fine too.
So first off, and there's terrible background noise. Like it's literally like just
you doing it at a sports bar. What's happening?
It is. It's literally them. I'm watching this. I'm like, it's them sitting at. They have like one. It's like a tabletop mic. It's kind of a cool setup. But anyway, so first off, they're like debating. Okay, what are we doing with the rules?
Kicking. Extra points. But anyway, it's stuff like that we have to keep.
Eliminate all the kickers. Get rid of them. Send them to Siberia.
I think we're all kind of on board for that, right? At least see how it goes. The Bills have done it. They don't punt.
You're right.
They've been punted in 2 games.
I will say though, I think that the NFL treats itself
so this is Tyler.
so much as the USSR. They treat information of anything that happens behind the scenes, anything with X's and O's. By and large, there's exceptions. Like it's the nuclear codes. So
they're talking about giving people insights.
Codes. They want to know what's really happening behind the scenes. They deserve to know what's happening behind the scenes. If you give them that somehow with this product, coverage wise, anything as you're saying, I think there could be an audience for that, a huge audience for that.
I don't know. We have to at least try to be different, but like we talked about, this whole thing started by. I don't think one player will make the XFL. I think it's more about coaches and product. We'll do a good job. We're going to figure it out. But
I don't want to get you into trouble.
No, there's no trouble yet. We really don't have a lot yet.
I just think that there's an opportunity.
Like we're at ground. When I tell you we're at ground level, we're at ground level.
What was the point of that?
So there
was just no coherent thought there. It was just like 2 guys that were overheard talking at a coffee shop.
Yeah. So the idea is, so they're talking about, the idea of rule kicking and changes. So it seems like, Jim's been bouncing around the ideas, right? Like, hey, maybe we want to, earlier in the conversation, they had talked about, hey, maybe we don't want to do extra points for the first 2 quarters of the game. Like they're bouncing around ideas, right? Because Jim is with the football operations. But then they come into this idea and they're talking about, giving coaches access. And Tyler goes, so I don't want to get you in trouble, like talking about anything. And Jim goes, well, there's not really anything to get in trouble. Like we don't really have anything right now. Like we're really starting at the ground level. And when I heard that, that's interesting to me. And I know that Jim was just brought in a couple weeks ago, but it's interesting to me that the director of football operations is like, we're really starting with nothing right now in terms of like building the football ops side of the XFL, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. It just doesn't, this is very aimless. Like if your decisions as an executive are as pointless as your podcast focus, you're in trouble already. Like that was just that. Like I sat there within the first 10 seconds. I didn't want to hear that interview anymore. And it got even worse because it's just like, it seemed like he had no idea about what he could do. So honestly, what it sounded like.
But does it, cause it scared me and I don't, I know I've upset listener Max with this because he doesn't think there's any reason to be upset right now, but is it scary to you that we're January 13th and the director of football operations said like, well, we've been kicking around doing like, maybe we still do the XFL original points, or maybe we do something else, or maybe we do that. I mean, I just would have felt like from a world building, those things would have been set in stone right now. I mean, I know we're a year out. That's where my confusion is.
I don't see any problem with it right now, but they've got to get in a room for a week, 40 plus hours, and get some things figured out. Bottom line. Because if they're aimless right now, they just don't know what they're going to do. And I don't think that, and to his credit, Vince McMahon, all the people he had underneath him, I think they had a game plan figured out about what they're going to do with extra points and all this stuff long before this point on the launch of 2.0. I want to assume that, right? Is that wrong?
Well, I know that Sam Shortstein that worked with a lot of these rules, there had been talks about eliminating all the kickers and not doing kickers at all. And that's why we did the extra points, is we don't want to have the place kicker, because then we can save money and just have the puncher. But then, to be buying this league now and then seemingly like, okay, we're rewriting the rule book, right? If we're moving the cities, we're rewriting the rule book. What did we buy?
The logos, the trademarks,
the moldy jerseys. No, I didn't say that.
I don't know.
There was
marketing. I don't know what they bought. Like if you're going to throw everything out again, like you just start a new football league.
Yeah, I know. Just to me, that could be exciting or not. The idea of the ground level. The other things are exciting, right? The mic'd up, the showing the meetings, the showing the behind the scenes. Getting people involved, showing how the X's and O's, all that. Does that do anything? Like, does that add the excitement to you? Are you going to be watching that? I don't know if I'm going to be watching that.
I mean, if it's like Hard Knocks on steroids, like they promise, or they're thinking, like, yeah, that would be interesting. That'd be watched. Like, that'd be great. But I mean, this is all fine and dandy right now. Like, this is all like great in theory, but in practice, is it going to pan out? We'll see. I don't know. They
also talk about, potentially working with the NFL to test some technology. That's interesting, right? I mean, the spring league was basically that for the XFL before, right? Testing out the rule kicks and stuff. It also did seem like I listened to part of the episode earlier, a couple weeks ago, where he got hired. And it does seem like they have a good idea of who the coaches are, because at the end of the show, they're like, well, you're going to be really excited to see like who we have coming up in the coaching room. Like maybe we could get some of them on the podcast. So it seems like, we are also a podcast where you can hear the words. So I don't want to like podcast brag, but it did seem like Jim had a good idea of like at least the people that were on the list, either hired or very close to being hired. But it just was interesting to me that here we are December 13th and we're at the ground level of building the football operations side of the XFL.
We'll see what happens. Jeez. Speaking of XFL ties, former Defenders head coach Pep Hamilton interviewed for the Carolina Panthers OC job. It's going to be interesting to see. Of course, he's been mentioned also in Houston. So it looks like he might get a gig here out of all of this, after all of this.
Yeah, I think Pep's going to get paid. It's just a shame, he had to go from DC and then had the Chargers last year. But I mean, look at, you got Herbert that's, on top of the world, right? And then
when his head coach isn't screwing things up. Let's be honest.
Time out. Dude, Derek Carr was like, you done F this one up, man. You saw him when he called the timeout at the end. He had that. PJ is being re-signed by Carolina. PJ, I think we are done with the idea that PJ is going to be.
They've got him pegged in as a backup. And even then, maybe not a backup. It's troubling to say the least. Former Defenders quarterback behind Cardell Jones, Sharman, Tyree Jackson scores his first NFL touchdown just last Saturday.
Yeah, so they've converted him to a tight end with the Eagles. The thing I've seen a lot of this going about, he was also injured his ACL at the end of the game, and so he's out now for the remainder of the season. So it's kind of like good and bad, because I saw a lot of like Tyree Jackson scored his first touchdown, but he was dealing with a back injury, had just come back, and then obviously that is bad. But Tyree, he's like 6'8", he's enormous, he's a huge man, and they have him as tight end.
Well, Eagles converting former quarterbacks to wide receiver and tight ends. Name a better combo.
A couple notes, so Doug Whaley, he is the senior vice president of the XFL. He was scouting talent alongside CFL and USFL scouts at the Call and Gridiron Showcase in Fort Worth. Ryan Roberts was also tweeting about this, how they had 28 NFL teams present, CFL, XFL, USFL. So XFL is on the move. I have a note down here later on that USFL player agencies, right, are like sending in their lists for the USFL for the draft. So we're getting ready for the player selection meeting and all that stuff. Also, we made a lot of jokes about the NFL draft is technically called the NFL player selection meeting.
Okay.
I made fun of that a lot, but if you Google like NFL drafts, it's actually like the NFL player selection meeting, also known as a draft. So.
Moving on here. What are we going at next? I'm kind of lost.
Yeah, then the last thing about XFL, and then we'll go to USFL. There was a recent article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch talking about the the Battlehawks, and remember, we don't want to get into proprietary information about the Battlehawks in St. Louis. But Kitty Ratcliffe, she is the president of the St. Louis Convention and Visitors Commission. She had a quote We loved having the Battlehawks here. We hope the XFL returns, and we would love to have the leagues back here for the fans who enjoyed it. So, needless to say, the red carpet is rolled out for the XFL should the XFL choose to go back to St. Louis.
All right. Let's move on to a different league now. Of course, we mentioned at the top of the show, no new head coaches announced for the USFL. They promised all 8 coaches last week.
The idea was something like you would do 4 and then 4. The idea is with Gene Skidstick, whatever, which we're going to talk about. He got Chiswick. Maybe they're still looking for the 8th coach.
Maybe they're looking for Maybe they're looking for coaches 5, 6, 7, and 8. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. So he's returned to the Tar Heels. Not as the head coach in the USFL. Remember, we talked about that last week. That Gene was rumored to be in it. Then he came out and said no. They just had a quote here where he's like, "I'm getting to the point in my life. I've got one more shot left in me. I've turned down a lot of jobs, and I just wanted to go where I was comfortable." That's the thing is, you're some of these elder coaches. It's like, do you want to go try this startup league? Paul Reeths and I talked about this with the coaches that they could attract in the USFL. Maybe some minority coaches, maybe some younger coaches, maybe some women. Some of these old crusty white guys might not be ready to like hop back on the saddle on some of these, experimental like spring league USFL stuff.
They got a place to play now, apparently, because the Birmingham City Council has approved the USFL usage of Legion Field. And they've also said they're going to provide up to $500,000 in-kind services for the use of the facility.
Yeah, Roy sent this to me as well. That he added the official announcement is going to be expected by the end of January. Paul and I talk about that too. It's a lot of stuff, but they finally, I think all those hurdles are approved. I could have seen that be the announcement today as well. Could be tomorrow, could be Monday, but presumably, we all know that is what's happening. So.
Antonio Brown, after his antics the other day, has been connected to both the USFL and FCF. Of course, FCF just wants to get anybody who flames out in the NFL because
you're not wrong. Yeah. Did you watch any of this video podcast with him?
Which one? The Antonio Brown one?
Yeah, where he was on the Full Send podcast.
I saw bits and pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. This is wild to me that Tampa Bay head coach Todd Haley like literally had texted Antonio Brown and said, come to the USFL. I have money, whatever. Antonio's sitting there laughing. And of course, Bob Menery just is on the podcast, which is crazy. Bob Menery is one of the team owners for the FCF, which we're going to get to. And he's like, well, no, don't just come to the FCF. And Antonio's like, F you. Like, I'm not. He's like, no, just come as a coach for basically. It's like, please just come to our league for 1 second. Like, please, I'll pay you. Like, please just, we'll roll out the red carpet. Like, we just want Antonio Brown. But according to Kevin Seifert, they're trying to sign him as a coach in the FCF. So I guess it worked.
I don't know what the purpose of this is other than to enable his behavior even further. Like, there's something wrong with Antonio Brown. I'm not saying it's like, I'm not stigmatizing him. I'm like, there's something that needs to be fixed. There's something that needs to be worked on. And in this case, like giving him another bag before he like kind of figures his stuff out. And I suspect that hit from Burfict like 7-8 years ago has constantly bothered Antonio Brown since then. And we're not helping him get possibly the help he needs. There's some people that argue that he's being a narcissist, but at the end of the day, like, maybe it's a combination of both, but if you treat one, maybe you could treat the other, who knows? But just, using his name to promote your league is kind of, I don't know. It's kind of dirty. It's kind of dirty. Well, speaking of dirty.
Yeah. And I have a comment here at the end of the show about FCF stuff. You do want to read the headline here?
Speaking of dirty, FCF raising $40 million in Series A funding from Animaka Brands and Delphi Digital. NFTs.
Yeah.
NFTs.
So they're doing the NFTs. Also, European League of Football is doing NFTs. So I saw a lot of, because Elf is kind of like the elite, right? We don't cover it a lot, right? RIP Josh Davis was kind of our Elf insider. But that was kind of like the premier. Okay, you're not in all the spring. Like, you're better than that. You're the European, but it was because it's good football and good, like no issues and all that stuff. And it's like they're adding NFTs too. It's like, no, like I saw our XFL Reddit was like, no, like what's going on with that? But yeah, FCF added $40 million. So I have to wonder, like, those 25, I think it was like 2,500 people a piece that paid like $150 to own part of the team. well, this, you got 40 million now. I'm going to care a lot more about what this 40 million is going towards than I am what that 25 grand was going towards or whatever. Also in the interview, Sarab came out and said that they were not profitable yet through year one, which is interesting because a lot of their time buys, like in the new NBC this year, is a time buy that they're going to be on Peacock. A lot of people don't know that. They think, oh, FCF's on Peacock. That's a time buy. But anyway, so they're coming back. They claim they have enough money for seasons 2, 3, and 4, which just because you have money for 4 seasons, ask the Olympics or ask World Junior Hockey or ask a lot of these things. Like, I wouldn't say they're guaranteed for 4 seasons just because they have the money for that.
Right. And that's, Marshawn's like optimistic that they're going to be around for 2 or 3 more seasons. But then again, like, we were expecting a second season 6 months after the first season ended, and that didn't happen. So there's still concerns. There's still concerns, especially this NFT thing. Like, this is dumb. This is all dumb.
Yeah.
You're selling like...
They boast a lot of their, original owners, right? Marshawn Lynch and all that. They still boast the 10 million total live views on Twitch, which we've talked about before. But now, so they're bringing in this Bored Ape Yacht Club that's an NFT group, and then this Gutter Cat Gang community. They're the people that like have the monkeys, right? We've talked about this with the last one.
Yep.
But some of these names that they're bringing in are interesting. So you have Jamal Anderson coming in, former NFL legend. You have Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. You have Atiki and Rondé Barber coming in. You have Steve Aoki coming in, at which, like I've told you, Dorothy goes, I might have to get on this FCF thing if they have Steve Aoki. Steve Aoki has 8.2 million Twitter followers.
Yeah. That's
astounding. But anyway, they're going to do a 9-week season, April 16th. We've already talked about this. 8 teams. They call them pro caliber players from the NFL, CFL, and NCAA programs. No, they don't put on there like XFL, even though there's going to be guys that presumably had been the XFL. And then, they have the quote from Marshawn here. We've talked about this. This April 16th kickoff is just astounding to me.
Yeah, they're kicking off. They're kicking off the same day as the USFL. They're doing that for petty reasons. Clearly doing that for petty reasons. And they're not competing. It's not football. And this NFT thing is just like, it just feels so dirty. It really does. I don't know how you are selling NFTs off this thing.
I just saw tonight before we got on, Ezekiel Elliott and one of the guys from the Cowboys, they're selling like wearable NFTs now. I'm like, oh, you mean clothes? Like, cool. What's a wearable NFT? It's a clothes.
What's next? Is this mouse going to become an NFT? Yeah. Is my keyboard going to be? Is the microphone going to become an NFT? Is any tangible thing? The whole point of an NFT is it's not tangible. You don't hold it in your hands. They
did already sell the Antonio Brown leaving the stadium with like all that. They sold that as an NFT, and I tweeted like, Fangers of Football had to be like, damn it, like that was our thing.
So stupid.
I have one note with Fangers of Football before we leave. I got very close to sending an angry tweet this week. Fangers of Football has started bullying people on Twitter. We all know. So if you guys weren't aware,
started
they bullied us more. So Bailey, that used to run the XFL stuff, his company's got hired now to help run the FCF stuff. So even though we don't acknowledge XFL, we're going to hire the social media guy that kind of like revolutionized this whole like football, all this stuff. So we bring in Bailey. But it's like bullying people in there. Like I saw this was sent to me this week, like people bullying, right? Like like Twitter follower checking, like, oh, well, I'm going to take our 23,000 followers to your 6. I said, the collective.
It's douchebaggery. It's douchebaggery.
I said, I didn't tweet it, but I said, the collective ownership of everyone that owns all these teams now is about 17 million Twitter followers by like Steve Aoki and Greg Miller and all these people. You have had a year's worth of national TV coverage, right? You've had $40 million coming in. You've been on Sports Center, all this stuff. The fact that you only have 26,000 Twitter followers, that is astounding.
Yeah.
That is what is astounding to me, is that you are a professional league that are rivaling right now the USFL that hasn't even kicked off in terms of Twitter followers. And you are an online football brand. Like you are a brand that plays on Twitch and you do not have. But you don't need to be, so if it's Bailey, if it's people that work with Bailey, you don't need to be, and if you guys see that, I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate for an official football league to be bullying people that are like critical of the of their game or whatever. Like I think you can be critical and not have to bully people on that. So
that's what they did with us. Like like Patrick Tease did that with us. Didn't want to listen to our podcast anymore. They didn't care about it anymore. Even if we were given a positive coverage, they didn't care if we were critical of one or two things. They're just, oh, you're just haters. No, we're not haters. We're just trying to like point out the flaws here in your product. So.
We have two voicemails real quick before we go. One is from Steve, and then we have one from Philip Ramirez is having a crisis of conscience here. But we got Steve. Steve's is short, real quick.
Hey guys, just a quick question. Do you think once the XFL starts, we'll see players that play in two different leagues, such as the XFL to USFL or CFL in the same year?
And as bad as Steve's audio quality was, it was still better than the Jim Monos podcast.
Yeah, true. I mean, maybe like a crossover between XFL and CFL, but I'm not sure USFL or this crap FCF stuff will have a crossover because the season starts right about the same time the CFL starts. So you might get a little bit of blend over from CFL to XFL, maybe a little bit, but other than that, it depends on the contracts. It really does just depends on the contracts with the two leagues.
USFL is really late. It's really late to get out in May and get in training camps in the CFL started in June. I mean, that's a really tight, like Paul said, I think you're better off XFL to CFL, maybe, but I still think they're not going to want that you played. It's like when WWE has The Rock and they're like, well, he's going to be making the movie in 6 months. We don't want him wrestling right now. Like, are you going to sign a CFL guy? Like, are you going to sign Lucky Whitehead if you know that he's playing 3 months of XFL? Probably not. Phil Ramirez is that he's probably the longest time Houston Roughnecks fan. And there's been a lot of chatter on the podcast lately that they might be, I have hypothesized that they might be leaving Houston because of the gamblers and all the other stuff. So Philip's having a conscious crisis. Crisis of conscience.
Hey guys, Philip here. First time, long time. Love you guys. Love the show. Keep up the good work. I hate to beat a dead horse, but can you guys please explain to me the reasoning behind Brian Woods in the USFL, a guy who created a football league from his garage?
Your words, Philip.
Is going to outdo Redbird Capital, Danny Garcia, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for the city of Houston. I don't get it. I don't understand how he's going to make those guys tuck tail and run and leave the city of Houston just because he's bringing a football team to Houston. I mean, they're not even here next year. They're in Birmingham, Alabama. Who's to say that the Roughnecks are going to outsell and outdraw the Houston Gamblers and make them have to leave to San Antonio? That's all I'm saying. Am I a homer? Yes, of course. I'm a homer. I love the Roughnecks. It was good football. Went to the opening day game with LA, the Wildcats. Me and my daughter, we watched every game. She knew PJ Walker, Cam Phillips. It was daddy-daughter time. I don't get it. Just tell me what I'm missing. I know I'm missing something. I don't get it. But anyway, thanks for the time. Go Cougs. Go Stros. Go Roughnecks. Go Red Wings. Rough them up. Thanks, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
You lost me at Go Stros there, dude. You lost me at Go Stros. Sorry, Philip. Sorry, Philip.
Philip is the owner of the misprinted illustrious XFL Markcast hat. So if you want to know how far back Philip goes, Philip is the owner of the misprinted hat.
I appreciate it, but you lost me at Go Stros. I don't think the Roughnecks are going to go anywhere. I think they're staying put. I do. Watch.
That's fine. I agree. Mark Perry and I in his interview talked that we believe that there's enough crossover between the executives of the XFL and the USFL that they're like, okay, XFL, you take St. Louis. We're going to go to Birmingham. Okay, XFL. Okay, we're going to go to Houston. You're going to go to San Antonio. I think there's enough crossover there that there's no way there's two teams in Houston. Right. I just don't think you're going to have the Gamblers and the Texans and the Roughnecks and like Houston's not that big. So that's my thing is that I just think that, and Mark backs me up, that there's enough crossover with the executives there. I don't think they're going to outdo it. I'm not saying that like the Gamblers are a risk for the Roughnecks. I just think that they're like, we're not going to deal with this. We don't want to, no headache. We'll go to San Antonio. We want that city anyway.
No way, shape, or form. So it'll be interesting to see when things start rolling out. Hopefully soon. A lot of questions still left to be answered. We're playing the guessing game here, and we appreciate all of you joining us along the way. Of course, many ways to get a hold of us. Subscribe and like, share the podcast out to your friends who might be interested. We always appreciate that listenership. And anything else you want to say before we head out? No,
just it should be. They said February, a week or two, we should have some good news coming out. So,
all right, thanks again for listening. We'll see you again here next week with more of your alt football news and the CFL because they're They don't consume all football. So CFL as well. We got to throw that in there. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.